Plov is the Russian name for rice pilaf, which consists of rice cooked with vegetables and meat. I've posted a couple of plov recipes recently, but I also wanted to share this one with you. This is a hybrid between a traditional Russian plov, which tends to be very bland, and an Uzbeki plov, which is intense and spicy, but also complicated to make if it's being made correctly, and be warned, you rarely see it being made correctly. This is a deeply flavored, rich, and satisfying dish that reheats very well, and it's absolutely perfect for a cold winter night.
Just to show you what the spices look like, I've got the 2 teaspoons of coriander seed, 2.5 teaspoons of sweet paprika. This is one I made myself from grinding up the chilies, but you can use a good quality purchased paprika powder, sweet paprika. 1 teaspoon of black peppercorns, 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder, bay leaf, 2 teaspoons of coarse salt, and half a teaspoon of dried dill. This is all going to get ground up. In a large bowl, I have 50 grams of ketchup already weighed out. I'm putting these ground spices in. Make sure you get all of them. And a tablespoon of lemon juice. And about 2 tablespoons of unfiltered sunflower oil. You can use regular vegetable oil, but the sunflower oil will give you better results in the end for flavor, more authentic. Okay, give this a quick whisk here. Make sure all the spices are dissolved. Now I have 2 fairly large thick pork chops here that I'm going to cut the cubes of meat from. But you have to see this fat in here. Don't let this worry you too much. This is going to be cooked 2 times, and you'll have an opportunity to get rid of most of the fat when you pass the broth that comes off of this into a fat separating pitcher or you refrigerate it. You'll see in a few minutes. So when you're trimming this up, don't let fairly large pieces of fat concern you. Of course, if there's a huge chunk that's nothing but fat, get rid of that. But this amount of fat you see here, this is normal, this is good, this will keep the pork tender. So don't go crazy when you're removing the fat as you cube it up. This is what I'm talking about after I cubed this up. We got a couple of pieces here that have just tons of fat on them. I'm not going to use those. These are going to get incorporated into some ground meat. These will get ground up with chicken or beef or something to make it more moist. This is the meat we're going to use. It's still got a lot of fat streaked through it, but it's no complete lumps of fat. The pork goes in, and we're going to massage this around. I'm going to turn the camera off before I do that. And this is what you end up with, this meat coated. Now you can put this in the refrigerator. You can put it in the refrigerator all the way up to overnight. It's really not the best. Really, you want to only marinate this for about an hour. When you marinate it too long, it starts to separate and you get this liquidy layer at the bottom. It doesn't cook the same. So I recommend not going crazy with the marinade time. Couple hours, okay. 1 hour, shoot for about 1 hour. You can see after I remove the pieces, there's very little marinade left in the bowl. It's almost all on the meat. This is what you want to do. Spread it out on a single layer on a thin metal pan. So after 10 minutes, turn the pieces over. Then we're going to put it back in. Here's what it looks like after another 10 minutes. Shake it around and give it the final time. You have to really watch it in the last couple minutes here. Make sure that it doesn't go from really caramelized to really burnt. Okay, I pulled the meat off to a bowl side. Now I've got this pan. I'm going to deglaze with hot water. Now we'll refrigerate this, let it settle.
Recently in Russia, what we've started to see in markets are these cleaned up, genetically engineered carrots that have almost no flavor and expensive. Right next to them are the dirt encrusted local carrots, full of flavor, incredibly aromatic, and dirt cheap. Dirt cheap. Once you clean them up, they're the same as far as appearance goes, and they have much more flavor. Yet, the cheap ones.
Now, we have our mise en place for making the actual plov. This is about 100 grams of onions, 100 grams of carrots. I have, this is the liquid that came off of cooking the meat earlier, and then deglazing the pan with water. We have like this fat cap on top of here, a solid sheet. This is what I'm gonna use to cook the vegetables in just a minute. I have the rice, which I'm going to rinse with cold water, the garlic, which I'm going to chop up in a few minutes, and we have the meat that's been refrigerated overnight and stored under cling film. Now begin heating a pan on a high heat. It's been several minutes later now. The pan has gotten hot. Now, during this time, I cut up this garlic and I'm letting it stand like this. This is an important step. I also took that lump of fat off the top and I drained some of the moisture off on paper towels. Now we're going to begin heating this, and then the carrots and the onion go in. Now begin paying attention to the time now, or set a timer, so that you know how long this is actually cooking. Yeah, it's been just over 4 minutes. Now I'm going to add about a teaspoon of salt to this. You don't want to do that initially because it'll interfere with the browning of the carrots and the onions. So it'll just draw moisture out and then they'll steam instead of brown. But at this point I'm going to add the salt. And I've got the rice here that I put in a sieve and I ran under cold water. Make sure you use cold water. And I'm going to add that in. 250 grams of rice. Stir this around a little bit to make sure it's evenly incorporated. Now we're going to add the garlic. It's about 6 cloves of garlic. Stir this around a little bit. Now I've still got the heat the whole time here. The heat has been on about 8 to 8.5. Very high heat compared to what I usually use. You want to really get some heat on here. This is called burning flavor onto the vegetables. So I'm going to let it go like this. Heat's still on 8. I'm going to let it go like this for just a little bit more. It's been about 1 minute now. Now I'm going to add the meat in. Stir this around a little bit. Make sure it's evenly incorporated. That's the key here. The heat is, right now it's still on 8.5, but it's going to get reduced in a couple minutes here. Okay. Now I've got the broth that what we deglazed the pan that the meat had been cooked in. Make sure you get all of it in. Yeah, I'm going to let this come up to a simmer on 8 before I reduce the heat. Give it a minute here, it'll come up to a simmer, as you'll see. Okay, here we have it now. It's been, I don't know, 45 seconds to a minute more. It's come up to a simmer. Now I'm reducing the heat down to 3, and I'm going to place a plate. It's just a little bit smaller than the contents there, and a lid over it as well. Now it's going to sit like this, cooking for about 30 minutes on a heat setting of 3. This is still going to be a fairly vigorous cook. This is the key. If you make it a really low heat, you won't develop those rich flavors in it. If you make it too high of a heat, you'll burn everything and it'll be nasty. So you might have to experiment a little bit to see what the ideal setting is for your stove. For me, it's about a 3. You know, like I say about every recipe, don't make it the very first time for guests. During this time, I chopped up about, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of dill and 3.5 tablespoons of finely minced carrot. And the time is elapsed on this. I'm adding in the carrot and that dill. and I'm going to stir it in. Now, there's some, it's not really fond, it's almost like a Spanish paella, because you've got rice here that's stuck to the bottom, but that's part of the flavor, that wonderful crisp rice that's at the bottom here. Now, you're going to have to scrape up the pan to pick all that up off the bottom. But it's now ready for serving, or you can refrigerate it and serve it a couple of days later if you prefer.
The second volume of my cookbook is now available through Amazon and other booksellers. It covers the YouTube recipes from the last 8 months with more in-depth information. I received requests for the procedures on all recipes, and I've listened to you. Every recipe has step-by-step directions, and of course there are recipes that aren't on YouTube. But this is not just a recipe book. Far from it, as you can see from some of the topics scrolling by here. I'm certain that anyone who watches my channel and any serious cook will find this book a treasury of useful and new information you won't find anywhere else. If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.